What if I told you there's a country worth $32 trillion that doesn't exist on any map? No borders, no flag, no citizens, just money. Endless rivers of money flowing through legal loopholes that were designed by the same people who benefit from them. An invisible empire where the richest people on earth pay less in taxes than the person who cleans their office at night. This isn't theory. This isn't conspiracy. This is the architecture of modern power, and once you see it, you can't unsee it. Let me take you back to 1970. The world was different then. The wealthy paid their taxes, not because they wanted to, but because they had to. In the United States, the top marginal tax rate was 70%. In the UK, it reached 98% on investment income. The social contract was clear. You make money in our society. You pay to maintain that society. Roads, schools, defense, healthcare. Everyone contributed according to their means. But the ultra-wealthy had a problem. They were making more money than ever before, and they were tired of sharing, so they asked a simple question. What if we could keep our citizenship, enjoy all the benefits of stable Western democracies, but pay taxes ... nowhere? And that question, that single thought, would reshape global capitalism forever. The answer already existed. Small islands, forgotten territories, former colonial outposts that needed revenue and didn't ask questions. The Cayman Islands, the British Virgin Islands, Bermuda, Luxembourg, Panama, Switzerland. These places became something new. Not countries in any meaningful sense, but financial black holes where money could enter and disappear from the official record. The mechanism was brilliant in its simplicity. You create a shell company, a legal entity that exists only on paper. You register it in a tax haven where corporate rates are zero or near zero. Then you route your income through that shell company. Suddenly, ... your profits don't belong to you anymore. They belong to a company registered in a place where nobody asks questions and nothing gets reported. But it gets darker, because this wasn't invented by criminals. It was invented by lawyers, accountants, the most respected firms in the world. They built an entire industry around helping the wealthy disappear their money legally. They wrote laws in small nations that would benefit their clients. They created financial instruments so complex that even regulators couldn't understand them. They turned tax avoidance into an art form, and they got rich doing it. By the 1980s, the invisible empire was thriving. The Big Four accounting firms, Deloitte, PwC, Ernst & Young, KPMG. They weren't just auditing companies anymore. They were designing tax strategies that bordered on magic. The double Irish with a Dutch sandwich, the Maltese cross, the Delaware loophole. These weren't just clever names. They were blueprints for making billions of dollars vanish from government balance sheets. And corporations learned fast. Apple, Google, Amazon, Microsoft, Facebook, the companies that define modern life, they all use tax havens. Not because they're breaking the law, but because the law was written to let them. Apple famously held $250 billion offshore to avoid paying U.S. taxes. That's more wealth than most countries will ever see, sitting in Irish and Caribbean subsidiaries that existed only as addresses on legal documents. Here's what that actually means. When Apple sells you an iPhone in California, the profit from that sale doesn't get recorded in California. It gets routed through Ireland, then to the Netherlands, then to Bermuda. By the time the paper trail ends, Apple has paid an effective tax rate of less than 2% on foreign profits. The official corporate rate at the time? 35%. Now multiply that by every major corporation. Every billionaire, every hedge fund. The numbers become incomprehensible. Economists estimate that $32 trillion, more than the GDP of the United States and China combined, is hidden in offshore accounts worldwide. $32 trillion that should be taxed. But isn't $32 trillion that could fund infrastructure ... healthcare ... education ... climate action. but instead sits in digital vaults earning interest for people who already have everything. But what does that mean for you? For the person working 2 jobs to pay rent? For the small business owner who can't afford clever accountants? It means you're paying more. Because when the wealthy don't pay their share, governments have 2 choices: cut services or raise taxes on everyone else. And they always choose the latter. Think about it. Every time you fill up your gas tank, you're paying fuel tax. Every time you buy groceries, sales tax, every paycheck. Income tax gets deducted before you even see the money. You can't hide your income in the Cayman Islands. You can't route your salary through an Irish subsidiary. You pay because you have no choice. While billionaires hire armies of lawyers to make sure they never have to. If your blood is starting to boil, if you're realizing the game was rigged before you were even born, then you're ready for what comes next. Subscribe now, because this rabbit hole goes deeper than you can possibly imagine. And the revelation coming will change everything you thought you knew about wealth and power. 2016, April 3rd. A German newspaper called Süddeutsche Zeitung publishes the largest data leak in history. 11.5 million documents from a Panamanian law firm called Mossack Fonseca, the Panama Papers. And suddenly, the invisible empire became visible. The documents revealed everything. Shell companies owned by world leaders. Offshore accounts belonging to celebrities and athletes. Criminal organizations using the same legal structures as Fortune 500 companies. The files implicated 12 current and former heads of state, hundreds of politicians, thousands of corporations, all using the same system to hide wealth and avoid taxes. The backlash was immediate. Protests in the streets, resignations, investigations. The Prime Minister of Iceland stepped down within days. The President of Ukraine's offshore dealings were exposed. Even Putin's inner circle was implicated through a $2 billion trail of shell companies and hidden assets. For a brief moment, the world saw the truth. The emperor had no clothes. The system that claimed to serve everyone was built to serve the few. But here's what happened next. Almost nothing. A few prosecutions, some regulatory reforms, more transparency rules that the wealthy immediately found new ways around. Because the problem wasn't a few corrupt politicians or one Panamanian law firm. The problem was the system itself. And the system was too big to fail. You see, entire economies now depend on tax havens. The Cayman Islands has more registered companies than people. More than 100,000 corporations for a population of 65,000. Luxembourg, a country smaller than Rhode Island, hosts over $4 trillion in investment funds. These places aren't nations anymore. They're financial services platforms. And if they shut down tomorrow, the global economy would collapse. So the game continues. New havens emerge. The Bahamas, Malta, Singapore, Dubai. Always another jurisdiction willing to offer secrecy in exchange for fees. Always another loophole. Always another legal structure. The lawyers stay one step ahead. The regulators arrive too late. And the money keeps flowing to places where questions aren't welcome. But here's the part that should terrify you. This isn't just about taxes anymore. It's about power. When wealth can move invisibly across borders, when the rich can opt out of the societies they live in, democracy itself becomes meaningless. Why would a billionaire care about your vote when they don't depend on your government for anything? Why would a corporation support public education when their executives send their kids to private schools and their profits are registered in Bermuda? The social contract is broken, not by accident, by design. The invisible empire doesn't conquer through military force. It conquers through legal complexity, through financial engineering, through making the system so complicated that ordinary people give up trying to understand it. And in that confusion, in that surrender, they win. Would you fight a war you didn't know you were in? Would you defend yourself against an enemy you couldn't see? That's the genius of it. Most people don't even know the invisible empire exists. They blame immigrants for economic problems. They blame politicians for budget deficits. They blame each other. while $32 trillion sits offshore untouched untaxed and growing. Here's the future they don't want you to imagine. Governments continue to underfund services because they can't collect taxes from the wealthy. Public infrastructure crumbles. Healthcare becomes unaffordable. Education turns into a luxury, and the middle class, that buffer between rich and poor that made democracy possible, disappears completely. You're either wealthy enough to opt out, or you're trapped in a system designed to extract everything you have. And cryptocurrency? That's not the solution. It's the evolution, a tax haven you can carry in your pocket. Wealth that exists everywhere and nowhere simultaneously. The invisible empire going digital. The final escape from accountability. But there's something they didn't count on. You're watching this, you're learning their game. You're seeing through the illusion. And once enough people wake up to the invisible empire it stops being invisible. Once enough voters understand that they're being robbed by legal fictions, those legal fictions can be changed. Laws can be rewritten. Loopholes can be closed. The system can be redesigned to serve people instead of hiding money. The question is, will we do it before it's too late? Before the wealth gap becomes so wide that democracy is just theater? Before the invisible empire becomes so powerful that governments answer to them instead of us? The vault is open now. You've seen what they built. An empire of shadows, a conspiracy of lawyers and accountants. A system where the richest pay nothing and the rest pay everything. $32 trillion hidden in plain sight. The greatest heist in human history, and it's completely legal. So what are you going to do with this knowledge? Are you going to close this video and pretend you didn't see? Are you going to share it and wake others up? Or are you going to demand that your representatives close these loopholes? Tax the invisible empire and make the system work for everyone again? The choice is yours, but the clock is ticking. And every second you wait, another $1 million flows into an offshore account. Another billionaire pays zero in taxes. Another piece of democracy gets auctioned off to the highest bidder. If this made you angry, if you ready to see exactly how deep the corruption goes and which specific politicians are protecting this system, then subscribe and activate notifications next week. We're exposing the Federal Reserve conspiracy, the private bank that controls your money, answers to no one, and has never been audited. The truth they buried for over a century starts now. Are you ready to follow the money all the way to the source?